controlling your experience modification, or a term commonly used, XMOD. Happy to welcome back our partners at Executive Safety Management Solutions, or ESM, who, as many of you know, is our trusted partner when it comes to safety and claims management for you, our clients. Sharon Poston, who has presented at prior Bowermaster Lunch and Learns, will be conducting the presentation today, and I'm just sort of doing the intro here. A few housekeeping things is you are all on mute mode, so you can't speak up and ask questions, but at the end you can type in some questions and we'll answer as many of those as we can, time permitting. But of course, you can always call your Bowermaster advisor and ask any outstanding questions you may have, and we'll, of course, answer those questions promptly for you. We are excited to bring the new webinar medium to our educational resources for you, our clients. As many of you know, since January of 2012, we've been doing Lunch and Learns on site or near our Cypress headquarters, our headquarters office in Cypress. And we wanted to continue those Lunch and Learns, and we will continue those to the second half of 2012. But we're also introducing the webinar medium as a way to get more clients involved, and understanding that there are schedule conflicts and geographic conflicts which can allow you to be at those on-site Lunch and Learns. So we will continue to do these webinars, and so we hope you find it to be a friendly and effective way by which to be educated. Before I hand it over to Sharon, I do just want to share a few comments on workers' compensation in California. The comments will hopefully raise the awareness on why controlling your XMOD and why this webinar is so important and timely, and why ultimately safety and claims management is so important in your organizations. Additionally, and we do hope as a Bowermaster client this isn't the first time you're hearing any of this, and hopefully it's more of a refresher course, but if it is your first time, hopefully you find it informative, and if not, hopefully you can pick up a few tips to better manage and control the experience modification. The work comp market in California is on the rise. I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard this. Where it will end up is undetermined, but higher than it is today is certainly a factual statement. The past two rate filings for January and July have combined for a total rate increase of 45.3%. 37% in January and 8.3% in July. Prior to these rate approvals, the Commissioner's Office was not approving rate increases, even though the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau, or WCIRB, and the insurance industry in general, i.e. the carriers, were pushing for rate increases. The Commissioner's Office was not approving them until January 1st, 2012, and now again July 1st, 2012, like I said, for a combined total increase of 45.3%. Now, these over the course of the past few years, insurance carriers have been gradually increasing their rates, so it's not as if you're going to see that significant increase overnight, because as I said, they have been slightly increasing their rates over that time, but now that the Commissioner's Office is behind this, the industry is certainly picking up. The reason these increases are being approved is because the combined loss ratio for the insurance industry, which includes losses paid and expenses, has been on the rise. The loss ratio for 2011 was 122%. The loss ratio for 2010 was 117%. In 2009, it was 117%. Now compare that loss ratio to what it was in 2005, 2006, which is it was 79% and 73%. And then in 1999, which I'm sure many of you want to forget about, which is when your work comp premiums were going through the roof, the loss ratio for the industry was 148%, which eventually we had the work comp reform of 2004, 2005, which pushed those rates down and the loss ratio down, but now we're seeing that back on the uptick. Again, we're not here to debate the issues facing the system and what's causing these increases, such as medical costs, waste, fraud, abuse, poor claims handling, and as many of people talk about the underground economy, which is taking money out of the system. But we just want to educate you on the things we can do to control your ultimate costs, which includes safety and claims management and overall your experience modification. I mean, if we can help you control your XMOD and keep that down, why the workers' compensation rates increase, that's going to ultimately give you the best competitive advantage and or disadvantage depending on what that XMOD is doing. So, we do ask that you talk with your Bowermaster advisor on how we can help you with this and incorporate the services of ESM in doing that. And so, at this time, I'll hand it over to Sharon, who will take over the presentation. Thanks, Sharon.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam. I want to introduce myself. I'm Sharon Poston, the president of ESM Solutions, and we greatly appreciate working with the Bowermaster team, and we thank Adam for allowing us to present this educational forum to you today. Although Adam and I are the only ones who get to talk today, pretty nice of us, huh? We do hope that you will actively participate in our webinar by responding to the polling questions. And as Adam mentioned, if you have questions during the presentation, you don't need to wait till the end. We will probably address them at the end, but at any time there is a space where you can type in a message, and we will get to those at the end of the program. All right, let's begin. I'll ask you the first question, and that is, do you know your company's XMOD? And why is it important? Well, it's important because if you have a guaranteed cost policy, that experience mod is applied directly to your standard premium. The formula is job classification times payroll times XMOD equals your premium. And as Adam mentioned, you'll hear us say different factors. Sometimes you might hear experience modification factor, experience modification rate, EMR, XMOD, mod. All of them are referring to the same thing, and that is your company's experience rating. I generally use XMOD or mod, but EMR, all that is the same thing. And the XMOD is important because, as I mentioned, it impacts your premium. If your mod is over 125%, it also subjects you to a Cal OSHA fine. You become part of the Target Inspection and Consultation Fund and are classified as a high hazard employer, which means you'll be assessed a penalty or a fine, and you may have a visit from Cal OSHA. If you're in the contracting business, having a high mod may prevent you or restrict you from bidding on certain projects. And it also provides a benchmark for your company to compare your safety program to other safety programs, to your competitors. So do you think of the XMOD like this? Like X-Files? It's a little sinister, alien, unknown, mysterious. Well, in this presentation today, I'm going to provide you first with an overview of the experience rating system in California that I hope will help demystify the basis for an XMOD. And then secondly, identify which factors of the mod are controllable by you and which ones are uncontrollable. And then lastly, give you 3 steps to manage and control your company's XMOD. We'll begin with kind of an understanding of the system. So stay with me because these next 6 slides are pretty factual, a lot of text and fairly formulaic and maybe even a little boring. But I really think these are necessary to give you the base to build your knowledge of the system so that you can learn how to work with it and manage it. Let me ask you another question. Who among you has purchased a big ticket item in the last year? You know, a house or a car, something that you took out a loan to purchase? Well, you know that your credit score was checked to see if you're a good risk to pay back the loan. And the theory is that if your past behavior predicts what your future behavior will be. And the experience rating system works on that same theory. Your experience, that is your payroll and your claims, over the past 3 years are going to be used to predict your future losses. Since a workers' comp policy is written for the prospective year, a look at your past allows a more accurate prediction of what your premium should be based on your past losses. So your experience mod is like your credit score, it's your safety credit score. If your claims from the past are greater than what is expected, then your mod will be higher than 100%. and you'll pay a surcharge on your prospective policy. If your losses were less than expected, then you'll pay less, and you'll have a credit mod. So if you think in terms of your experience modification is a comparison of your actual losses to what's expected for your type and class of business. And all of this data is gathered by the WCIRB, Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau, or sometimes called the Bureau. So the Bureau gathers all of this data, and that's what they use to promulgate your experience mod. Does an employer have to participate? Yes. If you qualify, then you must participate in the California Experience Rating Plan. More than 120,000 employers in California do participate. It's about 20% of the policies, or about 80% of all of the premium. And how does an employer qualify? You have to have 3 years of total premium averaging $24,200. And that's for this year. Every year that number changes. So if you think in terms of about $10,000 a year premium will qualify you for an experience mod. If you're a brand new business, as soon as you hit that mark, which would probably be at the end of the first or the second year, then you automatically qualify to be in the experience rating system. Now, this, I will add that it's the pure premium rate. It may not be your actual premium. So if you go to the website, the WCIRB online, oops, I think that's a typo, WCIRB online, LINE.org, you can actually calculate where you fall, and if you don't have experience mod, what it would take to qualify for one. I said before that your XMod is like your credit score. It's also like a ticket on your driving record. It stays with you for 3 years. The experience period used in the calculation of your XMod is a 3-year period. The payroll and the losses from the first 3 of the past 4 years are used. So when we talk about years, remember we're talking about policy years, not calendar years. So your policy anniversary date determines what your experience period is. For example, if your effective date of your policy is 7/1, that means your policy is 7/1/12 to 7/1/13, you would omit this last year that just expired, and the prior 3 years are the ones that are included in your mod. I've had employers say to me, you know, if their mod just comes out, and they say, how can my mod be so high? I had a really good year last year. Well, it's because last year is not included in your mod. It's the prior 3 years. And the reason for that is that the claims from this expiring policy year haven't had a chance to mature. And for example, maybe a claim occurred in your last policy year, and it looked like the employee was going to have a surgery. The claims adjuster put $50,000 on the claim, and then he healed without the need for surgery. So that claim needs to have time to have the healing process takes place, and then the reserves accurately reflect what the status of the claim is. All right, this is an important slide. Oh, by the way, you know, there are quite a few slides we're going through here, and don't worry about having to take voracious notes, because this entire webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Bowermaster website. So you can go back and refer to it whenever you want to. But this is one that you should know. It tells you the timing of the valuation of your claim. If I say to you, April the 15th, everybody knows what that is. That's the date your tax return is due. Well, you should also know the date that your claims are valued. If you think in terms of someone taking a snapshot of your claims, the claim reserve on that date, that snapshot freezes the financial picture to be used in the calculation of your XMod for the next policy year. The claims are valued 6 months after the policy expires. Technically 18 months from the inception, but usually a policy is a year in length. So we usually think in terms of 6 months after the policy expires, that's when the snapshot is taken. So for example, if your policy renews or incepts on July 1st, your claims will be valued on January 1st. That's the date when the claims handler's estimate of the claims is used for your calculation for the next policy year. As I mentioned, let's say that that employee of yours who we thought was going to have surgery, and the reserves were high, 50,000, and then he recovered, and the claim actually closed at 10,000. Whatever the numbers are on January 1st when the snapshot is taken, that's what you will live with until the following year when the claim is again valued. All right, here it is kind of in a graph. Maybe this is easier to understand. But you can see we're in the current year, 7/1/2012 is the effective date of your policy. Then 2011 is excluded, and the experience period is 10/9/8. So you can see it's a rolling 3 years. Every year, 1 year rolls on and 1 year rolls off. There is a floor to your X-mod. Based on your payroll, there is a lowest possible mod if you have no losses, but there is no ceiling. We recently saw a company whose mod was 536%. I don't know how they were still in business. So your goal is to control your experience mod. What you really want is something below 100%. 100% is average. If you're below that, that means you're doing better than the average with your credit mod. And the claims and payroll for each policy year stand alone, and they build on that lowest possible mod that you could have. So in this example, the company's mod was 105%. With no claims at all, their mod would be 55, and then you can see each policy year builds upon that. All right, we are ready for the first polling question. Let me see if I can manage all of this right now. Okay, here we are. The first question. How many policy years are generally used in your modification, experience modification classification? Okay, we'll give you about 5 seconds to vote, and all of you are pretty fast. So the polling is going to close. The polling is closed. All right, let's see how you did. Pretty good group here. You all can see that 78% of you were correct. There are 3 years in your experience period. Some of you put 5, and that's actually not an incorrect answer because the claims are submitted for 5 years, but only 3 years are used in the experience period. And there can be other factors that influence that 3 years. That's why I kind of put in parentheses generally. If you have a change in your policy anniversary date, if there's a change in ownership, if you have OSIP policies, all of those factors can add policy years outside of the general 3 years. But for the most part, it is a 3-year policy experience period. Whenever we audit an XMOD worksheet, we're always looking for possible errors. I mean, in this day when data is submitted electronically, you really wouldn't expect that there would be many clerical errors. But just last month, we audited an XMOD worksheet, and it had $1 million reported in a certain payroll when it should have been $10 million in payroll. Someone had inadvertently left off the 0. The result was 14 points on the mod. We've had other examples. Subrogation recovery would be an example. Let's say your employee is hit by an at-fault driver. Workers' comp is the first dollar payer, so your insurance workers' comp carrier will pay for the claim and then subrogate against the responsible third party. And sometimes that might take a year or 2 to resolve. Once the case is resolved, a recalculation revision can be made for the recovery money. If a claim is determined to be non-compensable, that's also a basis for recalculation. Joint coverage, that's a cumulative trauma period where there may be 2 carriers who are both on the exposure period, and maybe they both have claims set up. Whatever the case is resolved, the recalculation can take place. Closed compromised death is the death case that's resolved on the issue of compensability. Clerical error, as I mentioned, partially fraudulent, and so on. the basis for revision for over-reserving is not a basis for revision. So if you're not looking at your claims at that snapshot, remember I said it's 6 months after your policy expires, and somebody misses that deadline, then you're going to live with that reserve until the following year when the snapshot is taken again. I will mention one of my best stories for revision. I was called in on an account, and it actually was a death case where an employee was killed in a motor vehicle accident on the way home from work. It turned out to be non-compensable because he had stopped at a bar before going home and was legally intoxicated. But it took about 2.5 years, 3 years of fighting that in order to get the non-compensable result. So the claim was valued each year of those 3 years at the full death value. But once it was recalculated and went back, the employer received a premium return on all 3 years that totaled $180,000. A small contractor, believe me, he was quite happy with that result. All right, let's take a look. You know, we've had a bunch of text and a lot of stuff going on, so maybe looking at this visually will help you look at comparing two businesses that are competitors and how the mod affects those programs. Let's look on the left, and we'll call this the proactive program, and we'll use as a basis $100,000 in premium. If that employer's X-mod is 75%, they might also get a safety credit. The adjusted premium would be $67,500. Now let's look at the competitor on the right side, the one who doesn't have a safety program, the more reactive program. Same base premium of $100,000, but let's say their mod is 125%. No safety credit, their adjusted premium is $125,000. So there's a cost difference of $57,500 right off the bat. So if you're at the 125 and you're competing against someone whose mod is at 75, you see that they already have a financial competitive advantage in the bidding process. In addition, as I mentioned, if your mod is 125, you are part of the high hazard Cal/OSHA program, and you are subject to a fine up to $10,000 based upon your payroll. So the value is actually to the bottom line. You can see that if you had a profit margin of 5%, I kind of gave this example. If you're selling a product that costs $15, you have to create and sell 76,000 more products than your competitor. A way that you can actually take these same numbers and compare how the mod directly impacts you and what it's costing you. All right, we are ready for polling question number 2. Let me open it. Stay with me here. Where is that? How do I get to this polling question? I'm sorry. Hang on there. Technical difficulties. Where's question number 2? Okay. Now we've got it. Thank you for waiting. The question is, what X-mod will cause a Cal/OSHA fine? Please place your vote. Is it 80%, 125, 100, or 65? Vote now. We'll give you a few minutes. Please vote. All right, the polls are closing. Let's share the results. Pretty good. 93% of you said 125, and that's correct. If your experience mod is 125 or greater, you are subject to a Cal/OSHA fine. It's called the TICF, Target Inspection and Consultation Fund. It's codified in Labor Code Section 62.9. The fines range from $100 to $10,000 based on your payroll. And let's say your policy just started in July, we've used that example, and your mod's over to 125, but you're not getting any notices. Usually the notices are mailed out in February or March, so you may not even receive that until after the first of the year. And it can include a Cal/OSHA site inspection. So this is a good time to revisit your IIPP, your injury loss prevention plan. Make sure that that's done and everything is up to speed so that if you do get a surprise call from Cal OSHA, you are ready for them. The questions that you should take back to your organization and have a conversation about now is, what is your current mod? What is the average? We know that to be 100. Are you better or worse than average? Do you have a debit or a surcharge? All of these things are worth spending some time and taking a few steps to look at to see what you can do to impact them. All right, now you have a basic understanding of the system. What can you do to control your mod? Well, your mod is made up of basically 5 factors: the job classification code of your business, your payroll, the expected loss rate, which I'll explain in a moment, your losses, which means your claims, and then there's something called B and W values and D values as well. I'll talk about a few of the things that are uncontrollable, but that you should have an awareness of. You really can't influence these personally. But the first one is the expected loss rate. So your losses are compared to what's expected for you. So your classification of business, and there are about 350 different job classifications, has an expected rate of losses expected for every $100 of payroll. And this is subject to change on a yearly basis. They're usually the ELRs, expected loss rates, are published in November, and each class code is separately listed. Here's an example. Let's say you have a janitorial company. The janitorial service in 2011 was $3.42 per $100 of payroll. That's what's expected for that class of business. And you can see that it changed every year. In 2010 and 2009, it was something different. And some of those were showing reductions in the expected loss rate. So if the expected loss rate, your expected loss rate, is reduced by 4%, then your losses should go down commensurately. Otherwise, your mod is going to go up. Remember, your mod is a comparison of your actual losses to what's expected for your class and size of business. Adam was mentioning the loss ratio for the state of California is increasing, and that's because the claims are increasing. You can see that we hit a low in about 2004 and 5 after the reform, but it has steadily been increasing up. This is a slide from the WCIRB that shows that the average cost of an indemnity or a lost time claim has reached almost $67,000. There are a few additional actuarial calculations that are in the formula. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. Just know that these are based on your size and class of business. They're really not controllable because you're not going to change your classification, job classification. I'll just note that these factors are used to stabilize excuse me, and add credibility to the rating. The B and W values do have an impact because there was a change in 2010, and more weight was actually given to the actual claims. So if you're in your history, maybe you've had fairly low mods, and then 2010 they just bumped up. It's because there's a whole new way of calculating the X mods. And the Bureau has said that the impact of the change, if you have no claims, you can have a lower mod, and about 65% of the policies fell within that range, at least initially. And if you have claims, your mod is going to be actually higher, and about 29% of the employers fell within that policy. So you know that if there were 120,000 employers participating, as we mentioned, 29% is about 35,000 employers saw big increases in their mods. And in fact, quite a few saw mod increases of 10, 20, and 30% starting in 2010. All the more reason for you to really pay attention to your claims and the valuation time. I think I'll skip over this. The changes really had to do with the split formula for the expected and the excess ratings. So if you're all claims under $7,000 actually go in dollar for dollar. Claims higher than $7,000 are discounted. The maximum reporting value for a claim is $175,000. So even if you would have a catastrophic $1 million claim, the maximum reporting on your XMOD is $175,000. All right, we're kind of have all of that behind us. You have now a thorough understanding of the California Experience Rating System, right? So what can you do? There are 3 steps. Here they are. Number 1, prevent injuries. Number 2, use the best available medical care. And number 3, keep your injured employees at work through job accommodation. Let's take a look at these. Control frequency. Do you have an active and effective injury and illness prevention plan? Do you have a safety culture that starts at the top with the executive management committee and filters all the way down so that every employee knows the value and importance of safety within your organization? Have you targeted the exposures and the hazards? Because those are the things that drive your XMOD, those injuries. The second step was select the best medical provider. Do you have a designated medical provider within your medical provider network? Well, find out who's the best in your community. Ask around. Ask your other employers, who are they using as a designated clinic? And interview some of them. Seek out the best available medical care, because that's what you want for your employees. You want an injured employee to get the best treatment and get back to work as soon as possible. And communicate frequently with that designated doctor in the clinic. Let them know that you are actively involved and you want to know what their responses are and assist you with your return to work program. And if you have doctors that are not cooperating, report those to your carriers and your medical provider network. That's really the role of the umbrella medical provider network, is to provide education and direction for the doctors. So if you have a doctor who is not helpful and not providing work restrictions and assisting you with job accommodation, then let your carrier know about that. Make sure you train your managers and supervisors where to send an employee in the event of an injury. Avoid emergency rooms for non-emergency. The cost is horrendous and the waiting time is equally bad. Make sure you're coordinating medical specialist referrals. Sometimes injured employees can get lost in the shuffle. The treating doctor says, yes, he needs to see an orthopedist. But then that has to be approved by the insurance company, the appointment made, the employee notified. Stay involved with that and make sure that it happens. The referral shouldn't take more than a week or two. And I've seen cases where it takes months for an employee to get referred to a specialist. And then make sure that your employee keeps their follow-up appointments. Remind them. Know when their next office visit is, and encourage them to make sure that they go and get their appropriate treatment and get discharged. This third step in controlling the severity of the claim is to keep your employees actively involved with working through job accommodation. And that begins with a return to work plan. Your goal in a return to work plan is to reduce your lost days from work. Your employees and your supervisors and managers should all be aware that that's really a priority, because the truth is employees heal faster and better when they are in a work environment that's congenial with their work abilities. So as they begin to heal, they gradually increase so they're returning back to full duty. And make sure that you keep the employee involved in that process. You want them to be an active participant with you. I'll list one other option, and that is called first aid. If you have an injury that qualifies as first aid, and there is actually a labor code section, I listed it down at the bottom, 5401, that gives the definition of first aid, then you as the employer do have the right, if you choose, to pay for that first aid claim. Remember, when claims are submitted to the Bureau for your calculation of your MOD, it's not the number of claims, but the dollars of claims. So the claim may show up on a loss run somewhere, but if there's $0 paid, then there's no impact on your XMOD. All right, let's take a look at a real life example. This was an employer, a small employer, XYZ company. Their total annual payroll was about $300,000. Their mod in 2010 was 87. They thought they were doing a great job with their safety program and so on. In 2011, their mod jumped to 129. Bingo, right away, you know, tell OSHA is on the alert. And that was because of one $8,000 claim. I mean, this seems hard to believe, but one $8,000 claim cost them 42 points. So what could this employer have done in order to mitigate that loss? Well, unfortunately, the claim occurred late in the afternoon, and the supervisor didn't know where to send the employee. So he just said, go to the emergency room. He sent him to the emergency room, and the cost was over $2,500. Medical emergency room doctors tend to err on the side of caution, and they almost always give time off. And in this case, that's what happened. The doctor said, oh, well, if your back hurts, just take 3 weeks off. And then the employer didn't follow up to send them to your own clinic to get work restrictions and bring them back to work. So 3 weeks off work, $1,500 in temporary disability. Those two factors alone, if they had sent them to the clinic and provided modified work, would have saved a total of 20 points on the mod. It would have only been 109 under OSHA, 20% difference. So just taking these few steps, I hope you can see that you really can have a direct impact on your XMOD. The lesson of this example is make sure you have a designated medical clinic, train all supervisors where to send the injured worker, have it listed on your posting notice, and only use an emergency room for emergencies. The second step, implement a return to work plan. Train all supervisors and employees about your expectations of return to work. All right, one more polling question. Are you ready for this one? Okay. I am challenged. Here we are. The question is, an employer can pay the clinic directly for first aid claims. True or false? Oh, this was a quick one. So the polls are closed. Let's see how you did. Yes, 100% of you said true. Now, your insurance company may require that you submit that claim to them and know that the doctor will be submitting a claim. They are required to send their doctor's first report to the carrier. But if you notify your clinic directly to send the bill to you that you want to pay your first aid claims and you pay them promptly, then it will not have an impact on your XMOD. Again, it's the dollars, not the numbers, that impact your mod. All right, we made it through. Everyone still with me? In summary, your workers' comp premium is made up of your job classification rate times your payroll times your XMOD. And XMOD impacts the direct premium and impacts your bottom line. A credit mod gives you an advantage over your competitors in the bidding process, and XMODs can be controlled by effective safety measures and claims management. I've also listed some websites that are available for you. The WCIRB Online, which is correctly listed here, is available. It's really very informative, and it has a lot of information about payroll, remuneration, job classification, how do you qualify, getting a copy of your mod worksheet. All of that is available there on the WCIRonline.org. Then the leginfo.ca.gov also has the California Labor Code, and there's a place for you to contact your legislator. So as Adam mentioned, there are changes going on within the legislature and within the Division of Workers' Comp. Our reform of 2004 has slowly eroded so that now it's time for another tweaking, and everyone is taking a look at that. If you have an opinion, you want to see what bills are pending, you can go to leginfo.ca.gov, type in your zip code, and it will tell you who your legislators are, what their emails are, and what bills are pending, and you can comment to your legislators, who are your representatives of how you feel as a small business person. And then finally, the DIR is the Division of Industrial Relations. That's the California DIR. And there are links there to the Division of Workers' Comp and the Cal OSHA labor codes, so on and so on. It's actually a very valuable and informative site for you as well. All right. We have made it through in our 30 minutes. Are there any questions? I don't see any that is coming up here. Let me see. Let me look. Okay, no questions so far. But don't worry if you can't think of them now or if they come up.
You did a good job.
Oh, here we do have a question. I'm sorry, I just am seeing it. Will this PowerPoint be available later? Yes. It's going to be on the Bowermaster website. This particular webinar probably by the end of the week. Otherwise, if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to call your Bowermaster advisor, and we'll be happy to help you and guide you along your way. So Adam, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much, Sharon, for your time. Thank you to everyone who participated in today's webinar. As Sharon mentioned and as the question asked, this will be available on the Bowermaster website, and when that is, we will send out a notice via an email blast to let everyone know that it's there. So again, thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thanks, Adam. Goodbye.